I am introducing you today to Peter Mammes. Peter, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a fine artist. My main thing is drawing, and I also paint, and I'm making sculptures as well. But my main thing is drawing, and I'm originally from Johannesburg, but I'm based in London. And if you do hear an ambulance going past, it's because I live close to the hospital, and so ambulances come extremely fast every 5 minutes. Yeah.
And at this time of COVID and everything, I suppose it is a busy hospital.
You'd be surprised. I don't know what's going on now. So.
Okay, so when I asked you to send a painting for us to discuss, you sent me Mercy Killing. Tell us a little bit about this painting. Why did you choose this painting to represent you as an artist?
So this painting was a really big breakthrough for me. It's really a giant painting. It's you can't get a sense of the scale from looking at it, but it's absolutely giant. And I made it here in London. So what happened is, the first time I came to London, I started with this painting, and I was about halfway with the painting, and then for personal reasons I had to go back to South Africa, and they wouldn't let me back in the UK when I tried to come back. So I was deported basically, and then it took me a year to get back here. And when I came back, the painting was, and this was like this, I'd left this painting halfway. So it was this, every day it was this agonizing thing. Like, I don't like leaving artworks halfway. It's the first artwork that I left halfway for so long. But then, I came back and I finished it. So that's just the backstory of that. So my main thing about this painting was, so especially in South Africa, but internationally, there's this craze with these big faces. All these painters, they paint these big faces in a sort of, like slapdash kind of way, and put expressive marks on. They paint it very realistic, put all the expressive marks on it. And it's a craze. People they don't stop buying those things. So I decided to do my own version of that. It's like satire, it's like playing on that idea. But then this is a man with a bullet hole in his forehead. So, and I got the image was from, so there's a bunch of archives and museums here. And the one archive was the Wellcome Museum. A Wellcome Museum and Library. And this came from one of the books that I found there. That was an autopsy manual. So I drew the picture, used the picture reference of a man who's had a gunshot wound to the front of his head. And then on the left bottom, that's a woman who's strangled. So that's also from one of those kind of books. And it's from an autopsy manual as well. She was strangled. This is from the late 1800s. She was strangled, and so the book deals with, in this very kind of dry way of, like, there's no story behind any of it. And I just found the image very kind of captivating. So what I've done here is I've put this unbelievably sort of horrific, disturbing kind of images together in this super beautiful way. And then what that does is it kind of evokes this kind of sort of what's the word, like discord within the viewer, because it's this beautiful thing. I mean, if you see it in person, it's unbelievably beautiful, and so much neon color. So it's so neon, so like bright. Then it's this really kind of disturbing kind of subject matter. So another thing You can't see it here really. You'd have to see it in real life. But I painted, when I came to London, I was absolutely blown away by the quality of paint and the quality of pigments that you can get here. So I started experimenting with pigment and adding pigment to my paints and actually making my own paints now, which that's what I'm doing at the moment. So I use certain paints, like really high quality paints, but then I mix other pigments into it. And so with this one, I used pearlescent, lots of pearlescent. So that is like a shiny kind of thing. So it's got like weird, and I didn't even know before I came here. There's different kinds of them. So like I always thought, there's just they usually just call it pearlescent, but there's all kinds of different kinds. There's ones that are blue, there's ones that are red, there's ones that are silver. So this is even in this picture. If you look on the top, there's like a flower pattern. You can see there's like a shine to it. So, in real life, when you see this painting, it's, depending on what angle the light catches it, it's got like a different look to it.
And of course, that iridescence from the pearlization actually also adds another layer to this incongruency between the prettiness of the picture and the horrific subject matter.
Yeah, and so also, sorry, I didn't say anything about this, but the neon colors, I'm neon obsessed, absolutely neon obsessed, and that's also another thing. So the painting, in theory, looks, if you were to take the color out, it's sort of old-fashioned in the way that it's done. But the fact that I've added the neon colors makes it this ultra modern thing, it's ultra contemporary with these neon colors and the paint. Now that's kind of what I try and do as an artist. Is I try and use like old techniques, traditional techniques, and mix them with these ultra modern, ultra sort of, and then mix those things completely. In a way, because if you look at my work, you wouldn't say any of it was, you wouldn't say that it's old fashioned, it wouldn't, it's like ultra modern, but it's got a contemporary kind of thing to it.
Well, the colors definitely, yes. Would you say that your paintings then, because of this combination of media and then subject matter, by choice of the media, you are establishing yourself in the present. But because of the subject matter, you're linking yourself or the work to issues that carry from our history. So you're saying, I'm standing in this time now, but I'm looking at stuff from the past and I'm trying to make sense of it.
Yeah, so not in this artwork so much, okay? But in a lot of my other artworks, I deal with the First World War and the Second World War. And when I was in South Africa, I was focusing on the Boer War. And, so a lot of our founding myths were, and, the defining sort of ideas of Western civilization came from the First World War. And, the Boer War and the First World War kind of blend into one, even though there's quite some time between them, but they kind of, it's even the same people who are a part of it, the same players who are in both. But yeah, so I try and draw conclusions from, look, let me just say this first. My idea is not to, I think like political cartoonists, their idea is to give one specific idea per artwork. I just don't think that's the role of an artist. The role of an artist is to push ideas, and it's, so my thing is about, it's not just a one trick pony. It's trying to sort of put something out there that starts a dialogue. But in any case, so taking these ideas from from our past, and then using them in a modern way and putting them together, maybe in combinations with other things that they would never have been used in. so that people can draw their own conclusions then, and just to start sort of dialogues, make people think about stuff. I don't have answers to anything, you know, and I don't pretend to have those answers at all. So, and I think it's very it's people who think they've got the answers, they're wrong. So yeah.
So would you say that your art is dependent on the viewer? That the viewer needs to be able to use this as a catalyst, as it were, to kind of bring their own stories in, make their own conclusions based on certain visual cues that you've given them?
Yeah, I mean, as young artists have this idea that they are making art in a vacuum, you know, and they always want to have this whole thing about, you know, that they want to go out and like, I don't need the world, you know, I'm doing it on my own. And that's just not true. You know, you are just one unit in a society. And the artwork gets really interesting for me, at least, when it opens a dialogue between you and the viewer. And your ideas, even if you try and not see it that way, but your ideas start changing because of the viewer, like the feedback that you get. So, you know, even in a stupid way, you know, if an artwork sells, then maybe the next one you're like, oh, what was it about that artwork that, or if it evokes a certain kind of, you know, people really like it, or they, you know, they don't like it, that influences your, you know, the way you do it. So it's a dialogue. All of this is always a dialogue. I think that's important to know. You know, young artists are always of the opinion that they don't need the outside world, but they do.
Back to this painting, the pattern, you use pattern very extensively in the negative space in this artwork. You've got different patterns overlaying each other, and it is a signature of your art. Do you want to talk a little bit about your use of pattern, where that comes from, why it is in the artwork, what function it has?
You know, so I started getting interested in pattern when I started traveling. And I realized that pattern is kind of like like, you know, I'm talking about in the broad sort of sense, is a symbolic of a culture. But what's really fascinating is when cultures meet and then they exchange patterns, and then, you know, you get this sort of, you know, so let's say there's Indian patterns and there's Anglo patterns, you know, and then when those two civilizations kind of clashed, then they got mixed up, and now they're indistinguishable. You know, you can say, oh, that's more of like a Arabesque pattern. That one's more of a, you know, like a Mexican pattern or whatever. But, you know, in today's sort of globalist world, they just totally mixed and used like that too. So, you know, that idea is a way for me to depict cultures, and especially the places that I've been in my work, that, you know, without actually depicting them physically. So a lot of the pattern in this artwork is from, so there's two places. Well, okay, it's two places. It's Russia and India. So I spent quite a long time working on drawings in India, and that influenced me a lot. And then also Russia, Moscow. So, you know, it's sort of, that's also telling the story from where I've been. I've drawn hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of patterns, and I don't know why certain ones sort of stick with me. And also, I might draw it, but never use it actually. But then other ones just use it over and over and over to death. It's just something sort of. So where I get my patterns mainly is on the facades of buildings, temples, you know, ancient temples, ancient buildings. So some of my latest patterns are from Egypt. They're ancient Egyptian, and then also they're like ancient Arabic, ancient Christian, Coptic Christian patterns. In India, there's a lot of patterns that I got from temples, mostly temples, ancient temples, temples from like 700 years ago. And there's something about some of these patterns. It's just, so the thing about pattern is no one truly designs a new pattern ever. It's always someone gets influenced by the next person, gets influenced by the next person, and they copy. So each time it gets copied, someone adds something different, adds a little bit here, adds a little bit there. Even people who make up patterns from the beginning, they're using the techniques and the skills that they saw in other patterns. So I'm making some patterns, actual 3D relief patterns at the moment, and they are my own in a sense, but I use different reference. So it's another sort of, it's the same with folk music. Folk music, there's a song that originated, no one can find the first person who sung that song, and then they get sort of, and they modernize over hundreds of years. I find that fascinating.
Looking at your image, there's a lot of things in this image that are like symbols and stuff like that are coming up that you as an artist have to kind of accept that people are going to see it as loaded with meaning, whether you intended it like that or not. So for instance, the armadillo, people now have
let me just correct. Sorry, it's not an armadillo, it is a pangolin.
Yes, I was about to say the pangolin. People now
so they're
associate
very,
pangolins
very
with, sorry. And the pangolin is now irredeemably associated with COVID because of the whole like potential origins with the virus and what have you. And of course, this huge main image of the guy with the bullet in his head. And then just below him, there's a soldier figure. How much do you feel that it's important that your ideas of the symbols have to come across, or how much do you allow people to see that symbol within their own context?
Well, I mean, once you've made it, you have no control over the artwork. So let me just quickly talk about the pangolin. So when I started drawing pangolins, the reason I draw them is they're really, really difficult. That was the main reason I started drawing. There's certain things that I draw that are just, the only reason I do it is because it's really challenging. And, it takes me days to perfect that thing. Yeah, anyone can draw it, but can you draw it? Can they draw it to make it look right? And then also I need to draw it so it can be replicated again, so in a way you're trying to simplify it as much as possible. Then I mean, there's certain things that you can't have control over at all, and that's the public perception. Like I can say it as many times as I want to about, there's songs for instance that out there, and the songwriters talk about the ideas behind the song, and you listen to it and you're like, what? That wasn't like what they intended. I mean, I don't get that at all. So yeah, it's funny. I guess even in a subconscious way, even if you're not doing it intentionally, everything that's happening around you, you're bouncing those ideas, you're reflecting those ideas back into your work. So, let's say these ideas of sort of masculinity or, power structures or whatever, it's there. I mean, so that guy in the bottom right is a general from the First World War, a British general. I forget his name now. And then behind him is a little girl. I painted that neon pink. A lot of it's just artistic license. I just wanted neon pink there, but the little girl, she's sort of standing there defiantly, It's also from a medical textbook. She's got something wrong, but she's not very happy to be have been photographed. She's standing here sort of defiantly. But then there's also the two figures that are dead in the front, you know, and a lot of my work is about those kind of, you know, we're all kind of the common man's just sort of cannon fodder for the powerful people. You know, we're all sort of just corpses. We're just these sort of, you know, pawns in some sort of game.
Okay.
I mean, I painted this thing before COVID, so I've been obsessed with pangolins before. Look at this one. This is my newest. I don't know if can you see it?
Yeah.
It's the newest pangolin I drew.
So coming back to the title again, so you just mentioned about the whole power struggle thing and how people are just cannon fodder for the powerful. So mercy killing, the title, how does that relate to that?
I mean, it relates to being put out of your misery, right? I guess, you know, I'd rather not put too much into explaining an artwork like this. So certain things that I do or say, you know, everyone's got their agenda behind things. And like I said, I don't want to be like a political cartoonist. And look, I've got a lot of respect for them. All right. And I really like their work. But their idea is just to give one idea, you know. It's brilliant. It's brilliant the way that they symbolically depict these things or whatever. But that's not what I'm doing. So, you know, art isn't about that. You know, I don't want to say that's a kind of craft, but it is though, you know, and this is my problem with a lot of, sorry, this is not off a topic here, but it does kind of come back to that too. You know, there's a lot of artists today, conceptual artists, whatever, where it's just, the words are one trick pony. And I mean, the world's got its place and everything, but I think it's far richer. There's far richer kind of experience to be had as an artist and a viewer, to not have this one trick pony on your wall or see this one thing all the time.
Well, I suppose in many ways one could argue that you're painting the high degree of skill that you've purposefully applied to this paintings, like say, for instance, your pangolins and your patterns, is in itself a statement. You are saying that with your effort and your intention, you're creating something that is going to have value for a much longer period of time than just this particular context. And I think that's an artistic statement and has value.
Well, my feeling is that, you know, in today's world, especially in London, there's so much garbage out there, really. And it's gotten to the point where it's like having skill is seen as, you know, as a bad thing. It's, you know, and actually doing something that's well made or, you know, well executed is subversive. It's become subversive.
So, well, that's
so, you know,
art, using your skill and your
yeah. Well, one of them, man.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, or you think you pretty much?
I guess my main thing that I want to tell anyone who's making art or whatever is it's not about what you're making so much. It's about pushing the limits of art itself. You know, like there's lots of people just painting stuff, and they're selling it, and you know, great for them. But what's the point of that? Like for me, it's about, I find something that sort of makes me so excited that I can't sleep for days and days on end. You know, like like struggle to sleep, and I'm like lying there obsessing about this like neon paint for the pearl lesson. I'm like, like, I bore everyone to death because I can't stop talking for like 4 weeks about pearl lesson, there's pearl lesson. Have you seen this pearl lesson? And like that's the thing about art is it's supposed to be this it's like my studio is a laboratory, and this is a lab for me to experiment the whole time. And it's not necessarily about making, like refining something and then making it sleek and polished kind of thing. It's more about sort of pushing boundaries. Every time I think, how can I push that thing further? How can I do better? These color combinations weren't right. I mean, even in the sense of like when you make a drawing and it's the composition, that drawing's got a good balance. I mean, that artwork with where the figures are, when you add color, it adds another layer to that with creating that balance. That's what this whole thing's about. It's just improving. And finally, hopefully, at some point, pushing the boundaries of art itself. At first you're just pushing your own boundaries, but then finally it's about pushing the actual boundaries of art, like go where no one's gone before. That's what excites me, that's where I'm going. I don't care about any of this other stuff. It's about like, I'm making something no one's done before, or at least, there's no such thing as making something new, but you've pushed it, you've pushed it further. So, that's what I was saying about drawing the pangolins. They might not look like, you look at the drawing, okay, whatever, but drawing that thing was crazy difficult. It took me days. Drawing other things, like the pangolin I showed you, or, there's lots of drawings I just do because it's challenging. That's the only reason. It's like visually challenging and it takes time to do it.
It's like Edmund Hillary, why do you climb Everest? Because it's there.
Yeah. And it's just fun to do it. And like I see a lot of artists that develop a skill and then they just milk it forever. They don't actually develop anymore. What's the point of that? What's the point of being alive? I'd rather not be making art and do that. It's like, this is not just a like little like money making scheme or whatever. This is the reason. This is the reason to live. It's all that sort of is there. So yeah, sorry, I'm like going on and on and on about that, but I just felt like I had to say that.
No, absolutely, it's inspiring, and also it does come back to the artwork. Like I say, your art then it tells your story more. It makes everybody understand all that detail, that obsession, those layers, the absolute brilliance of the composition. I mean, it's like Cézanne, what he was talking about, pushing the boundaries and making a new form of art, and how he was also so obsessive about placement and color and balance and all of that. If the students can remember that and then relate it back to what you're doing now, you can see how it all fits in together and it makes sense, and you can see what you're doing in this art. So no, it's cool, all good.
When you start making stuff and literally you can't sleep at night because you're like so excited about it, and I get these phases, where it's like, oh my God, the pearlescence was one. And like, I mean, that was, not being able to sleep for days. And there's been lots of those. It's constantly running from one to the next. Like, so yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Your input has really been appreciated. I know in many ways the kids will, understand your work better now because of this. And and maybe we'll have another conversation again at another time, maybe look at some of your three-dimensional work. So thank you very much, Peter.
All right, thank you.